Hello everyone, I'm Mike Kenichi and this is Hometown Heroes. And tonight is part 2 of our interview with Derby football great and legendary Woodland coach Chris Anderson. And Coach, I want to thank you for coming on again. You know, we had so much fun in part 1 and now we start with part 2, and where do we begin? Talk to me about Woodland football. And basically, Coach, tell me what that first practice was like, not so much on the field, but you took those kids in the summer, I believe, and had them working out. What was that like the first day for you?
Well, I was an employee at the Shelton Boys and Girls Club, and all the players had signed up for a strength and conditioning program there. So I was able to learn a lot about the players and get them stronger faster there. I remember we took a jog up to Shelton High School. I was leading the pack, and some of the players walked off at that point. They weren't going all the way up to the high school. So we were setting the tone pretty early.
Now let me ask you, that first day, maybe the first day is not a good example. Let's try the first couple weeks. Was there any regret in the beginning where you're like, you know what, I went from coaching varsity, because Woodland wasn't a varsity program right away, so you had to kind of go back to the drawing board and go back to being a freshman coach. Was there any regret in the beginning at all where you said, did I make a mistake here?
Well, you know, it wasn't a regret. I think you realized how much work was ahead of you. And we had 9th and 10th graders only, so we were scheduled to be a freshman team. We were able to put together a freshman-sophomore combined schedule and play 11 games. We had practiced not at our field at the high school because the field wasn't ready, so we were busing the practice over at Laurel Ledge Elementary School. And we had piping as our goalposts. There was no grass on the field, no lines. We had 60 players, but there was only uniforms for 40. So I had a practice on one half of the field for kids with helmets and a practice on the other half for kids without helmets.
Oh, man.
And I hired... I was fortunate to get some of the players that I coached at Shelton to come on to help me out at Woodland. And they were great teachers and motivators. Josh Gamble, and I think he was one of the first guys that I hired.
Right. And you know, Coach, as far as like Woodland goes, I mean, it's very easy when you have established players. You know, when you played for Derby had been an established program. Same thing with Shelton. But now you had a program where you kind of had to establish it. You had to kind of make it a program. That's not easy to do. Was the first year a very rough year for you? Did you enjoy that first year, or was it like, how hard was it for you to get these kids to focus on football?
Well, there's two sides of the coin, because being a new program, they don't know any better. So whatever you establish is going to be the way. So when we established our 6 a.m. summer workouts, they didn't know any better. They just did it and didn't question it. You know, they say that it's easier to start a program than it is to change a culture. And I believe that, you know, being in different programs for sure.
Right. And, you know, I kind of compare you a little bit to Coach Carbone's time at Derby, because when he came there, Derby really wasn't a successful program. These kids, you know, they had kind of had coaches who were a little easy on them. So he kind of brought a new way of football to them. And a lot of kids quit. They didn't stick it out right away the first year. He had a lot of kids quit. Did you find that problem at all at Woodland? Because, I mean, these kids are getting introduced to football, and they're getting introduced to your style of football. Did you lose some kids that first season?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
You know, creating that mentality, I was a little bit naive in the beginning, thinking that everybody was going to think like me. It was going to be all in. It was going to, you know, live and die for the jersey. But that was not the case. And I could remember during one of our tough practices, about 13 players or so walked out, and they were saying, no, we were not going to do this. This is too hard. And then they tried to come back into practice, and I stopped the practice, and I said, hang on now. You guys walked off. Now you're going to stay over there. And we actually ended up suspending them from the first ever freshman game at Woodland High School. But it was a good lesson learned, and you know, we were going to set the bar high, and we were going to work hard at it.
And I'm sure you're talking about 13 players. You said I'm sure some of them would, you know, go on to be great players for you. So they were probably talented players as well. So it wasn't like, you know, a player who just didn't have any talent. You definitely had some talented players who walked off that day.
Oh, absolutely. One of them ended up being our star running back, who scored 66 touchdowns for us in his high school career.
Right. That's unbelievable. Yeah. So now the first season, you guys play a freshman schedule, and if I'm not mistaken, you went 7-3 that first year, maybe 8-2.
8-3 was our record,
and that was the freshman team.
It was a freshman sophomore combined team.
Right.
We played against some freshman teams and some JV teams.
Right, but still in all, and I get, some of those kids probably did come from Seymour. Some probably came from Oxford because, it was Beacon Falls. It was a new school. But still, to that first year, and these kids some of them are just learning how to play. I've talked to a couple of them. Matt Trasky comes to mind. Matt told me he had never played football before. So, to get 8 wins in your first year, even though, who cares if it was a freshman team or whatever, that's still a pretty big accomplishment.
We had some good players, and it's always easier when you have some talent on the field. And
right.
With good experiences that I had at Shelton, we were able to get the kids in the right spots, and we actually did a little bit of shotgun. We started our spread a little bit early at that time, and it was a very successful season, the first season.
Right. And one of the things, every program does, and they're not really allowed to do it now, which, that's how much the sport has changed. But you were able to do triple sessions, and I know there were a lot of triple sessions in the beginning, but these kids all seemed to buy into it, huh? They showed up. I know you had those kids who walked off, but after that, they all came. So right away you were able to get these kids committed to football. You didn't have that problem once that first season was over?
Well, again, we established who we were going to be, when we were going to practice, and triple sessions was a big part of who we were going to be. And for a couple of years, we were going over to Shelton in fall camp and practicing with them.
Right.
We were introducing a brand new program to Shelton when they were rocking and rolling. So, again, we set the bar pretty high for them.
Right. So now the 2001 season comes to an end. 2002 season comes. I think really most people wanted you to play another year, a freshman JV type thing. They didn't want a varsity schedule. It was your call to go do a varsity schedule. You played a lot of teams out of state, right? If I'm not mistaken,
yes.
Out of league.
Yeah.
And what was your feeling behind that? Did you feel if they were going to go into the N.V.L. the next year, they needed that varsity experience right away?
We were supposed to be a JV team because we added one class in. We still didn't have any seniors yet in the building.
Right.
But I just felt that we were not going to get anything out of a JV season that year. We talked to the kids. I went and I asked the principal what his thoughts were and our athletic director at the time. And they said to write the CIAC and see what they say. And that's what we did. And we got approved. And I made an independent schedule calling just about everybody in the country.
Right. And you played a lot of good teams. You played a lot of teams.
We played New London.
Yeah.
And we played 11 games, 9 on the road, 2 out of state, 1 in Rhode Island, 1 in New York.
Right.
We ended up only winning 3 games that season, but we didn't have any seniors. So.
Right. And what did you take out of that season? I know 3-8 in most programs isn't a success, but did you leave that year thinking that was a good year considering, it was the first year as a varsity program and things of that nature?
Well, you can never replace experience, and we built our experience that year. All those sophomores, I think we started 18 sophomores that year.
Wow.
We were going to have for 2 more seasons. So, the fruits at the end, their senior year, were grown when they were sophomores.
Right, and I think something that you did right away, which, was a good job by you, is you really got your quarterback, Jared Kashmar, from the get-go. You were throwing the ball a lot. You were giving, I don't know if he played Pop Warner or not, but he definitely became a great quarterback for you. But right in the beginning, you had him throwing from the start. You weren't being conservative with him at all.
Well, we had a great quarterbacks coach in Timmy Phipps.
Yes.
Who was a good football player at Ansonia. And one of the things that I tried to do with my staff was bring in guys from different schools in the Valley. So we had the likes of Timmy Phipps from Ansonia and Jack Hunt and all those guys down the line. And then we had Timmy Shea that we brought in from Naugatuck, who was tutelaged by Craig Peters. We had Rob Dodato coming in from Seymour under Coach Sponheimer. Charlie Fowler from Shelton High School, who I actually coached, along with Josh Gamble, Matt Piccarillo. So I wanted to teach a piece of each program from the Valley to mold Woodland with.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, for a couple of years, you even had Ansonia great Kevin Sharkey, which, his experience alone, just the type of player he was. So, I mean, you brought in a lot of winning players as well, which I thought was a big key to their success.
You have to have a staff, a great staff, loyal, energy, good teachers, and all those guys were that.
Right. And you mentioned, you guys played most of your games on the road. You guys did finally have a home game, I think maybe the 9th or 10th game of the year. I remember being there that day. And, it was weird because I remember not expecting what I saw. Like, I had to walk up a big hill. There really wasn't a lot of bleachers. It was new. But I saw teachers that went to that game. The crowd was packed. I mean, to me, right there told me that the program was working because all these people came out for the game that day. That was I always said that was a big moment in Woodland football.
One of the big things that helped the program was that the community bought in. They hadn't had a high school in Beacon Falls in the longest time, Region 16. And when they finally got a high school, everybody was all in. All the parents and the booster clubs were always doing fundraisers, and everybody was on board. As you said, the stands were full, and it was an exciting time.
Exactly. Now the 2003 season begins, your first year in the Naugatuck Valley League. Your first game, I believe, was against New London that year, and you'd beaten them, I think, 2 years in a row. I think you beat them.
They beat us the first year.
The first year, okay. But the second game of the year, you play Holy Cross. Now, mind you, the top teams in the N.V.L for years have been Ansonia, Naugatuck, Seymour when they got in there. Holy Cross was always one of the teams, though, that had a history of knocking off those teams. They've had some great programs. You get your first N.V.L win against Holy Cross that night on a Saturday night. To me, right there, told me that it's going to be a good year for Woodland football because you didn't just beat, some program that wasn't good. This was a good program in Holy Cross.
It was one of the rivalry games early on because we had boys in Region 16 that were going to Holy Cross and playing in that game against us.
Right.
So we had to get over that hump to prove to our region that, hey, we are good enough and let's go to Woodland. We don't need to go to Holy Cross or to any other schools.
Right.
So it was a big win.
It's always, this is why, this is why you've had the career you've had, is you've always kind of done things that maybe some people scratch their head and be like, well, why is he doing that? One of the things I saw from the beginning, and, looking back, I had a lot of respect for, is not many coaches do this. You went up in the booth your first couple of years as a coach because you said you see the game better up top. But that was something that you kind of introduced to high school football because that was unheard of for a head coach to go up in the booth and kind of call the game.
I believe that an offensive coordinator, when you're calling plays, you have to be able to see the chess match for sure on the field.
Right.
So I did that for a couple of seasons. But I remember one night we had an issue with one of our players frustrated throwing a helmet, and then I realized, hey, the head coach is going to need to be on the sidelines throughout here.
Ansonia had a great team that year. They had a great team the previous year. They basically rolled everybody. You guys are playing them for the first time ever, and the score at the half, I believe, is 14-7. You guys hung with them, and this is vintage Chris Anderson. You played clock ball with them. You waited till the play clock went all the way down to call a play, and you guys are right in that game. And I remember Jack Hunt saying after the game, this team's going to be something special in a couple of years. It was a 35-7 loss, but in a lot of ways, it felt like some type of victory for you guys. Would you agree?
Well, opening up the paper the next day, it said, a rivalry is born.
Right.
Anytime you lose 35-7, you don't really feel like that. But there were moments in that game that you felt like you can compete with the number one team in the state. It was going to take us some time, and they overwhelmed us, in the second half of that game. But we definitely took some positives out of it.
They had a lot of great players. So, eventually experience and talent takes over. But, just the fact that you guys hung with them, because nobody did. For 2 years, that team did what they wanted to everybody. Sure. So, I thought that was, a big turning point in Woodland football. Now, you fast forward a little bit. One of the rivalries that Woodland had that sometimes I don't think people, give enough credit to, you had a great rivalry with Naugatuck. And that season, to me, was the biggest win for Woodland that year. You guys are losing, and you guys are driving the ball. And the last play of the game, you guys score a touchdown as the clock goes off. And that was a great win for Woodland football. it put you guys, I believe, at 6-2 and assured a winning season in your first year in the Naugatuck Valley League. How gratifying was that for you?
Well, first I have to correct you because there was no scoreboard yet. So we didn't even know how much time was left on the clock.
That's true.
And I was actually in the booth, as we talked about, and to get it was such a high-scoring game, back and forth. The score was something like 42-39 in its final. But we did get the ball with 50-something seconds left. We were able to drive down. It was actually a 4th and goal from the 19-yard line.
Right.
And we threw a post-corner pattern to Pat Krakowski from Jared Katchmar. He caught it, and the referee took his cap off. It's the only way we know the game was over. And I turned to Coach Shea, and I'm like, it's over. We did it. We couldn't believe it ourselves that we actually had beaten Naugatuck.
Right, and I think in your 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, you were 6-1 against Naugatuck. You had an unbelievable record. And you're talking about a program that was right. I mean, Ansonia beat them more than Naugatuck did, but they were right there with Ansonia for years in that league. I mean, those were the 2 top teams in the league. You could kind of, compare them with anybody. They had a great rivalry. And to beat a team like that and then continue to have success over them, I mean, had to make you as a coach feel very good.
Sure. I remember at halftime, it was a tight game, and we felt like it was a winnable game at that point. And I just kept harping to the kids, you got to believe. And our captain, Peter Brackett, he looked at me and he said, Coach, I believe. And then and there, I knew we had a chance, and the ball went our way, and we won the game, and a huge victory over a great traditional program.
Right. One of the things that was introduced that year as well was a new rivalry, one on Thanksgiving Eve, which I thought was a great job. Whoever came up with it, I think Paul's wife gets a lot of credit for it, but Woodland and Seymour, a rivalry was born in 2003, and that rivalry 13 years later is still a terrific rivalry. Talk about the Woodland-Seymour rivalry a little bit.
Oh, I can remember. I think Coach Sponheimer and I, we decided we were going to play the game on the Wednesday night so that we can get a big draw. We're not competing with Derby and Shelton and Ansonia and Naugatuck. We can get all those fans to the game. And I know Coach was on the show, and he had talked about how we used to plot each other back and forth to try to get everybody excited about it. Who's hating who, and you got to do what you got to do to motivate your kids. And it was a great rivalry, and I know that they were looking for one because they had played Amity, Saturday prior for years, and we needed a big rivalry game, and what better fit.
Yeah, and it's really been a great rivalry. I think the series right now, I could be wrong. I think Seymour's had 7-6. I could be wrong, but I mean, it's very much been even, like the teams trade wins back and forth, and it's really become, it's the best game to watch on a Wednesday night on Thanksgiving Eve, in my opinion.
It's a great game.
So let's get to 2004, the magical season. I don't care, what talent you have. To go from a newly found program in 2001 and to go 3 years later and be talking about winning the championship, that's an extraordinary accomplishment. Talk about the 2004 Woodland team. You basically coached them as freshmen, so you basically, were like a father to them for the last 4 years. What was that team like?
It's really a culmination of all the hard work that we put in 3 years prior. Going into the season, the kids wrote down their team goals, what they wanted, and everyone came back that said they wanted to win the state championship and be undefeated. Now, those are some pretty high goals that you're setting for yourself there.
Definitely.
You could be knocked down very easily if you slip up. But we just took it week by week, and we felt that we had great depth, and we had obviously great experience, and we had talent, and we just knew each other so well. We had great chemistry. And we were in the spread offense, which we did for a couple of years, and we were exciting, and we had the skill on the perimeter, and we put up a lot of points, and we were very good defensively. It was a very special team.
Right, and I think the thing about that team is they all wanted to win. So nobody had an agenda. Nobody, cared about stats. It was what was best for the team. And you had a lot of guys, that just did the little things to make it happen. There were a lot of good players on that team.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we were deep in talent, and I can remember we played Watertown in the opening game, and they got the ball first, and they went down and scored on us. It was 7-0.
This is a good Watertown team.
And I'm looking around saying, I can't believe that we're losing right now, because we thought we were going to be pretty good. And we ended up winning the game something like 52-7, and then we had 7 straight shutouts after that, I believe. Our defense was really unbelievable. Matt Dorsch at inside linebacker, and Timmy Hutt-Wagner, and Mike Scollin, and Zach Insero. I mean, I could just go on and on and on.
You know, I mean, the other thing is, too, you had to play Ansonia, I want to say the 9th game of the year, maybe 10th game. I don't know. I think there were 10 games that year. So you're playing a team in their, on their turf at Jarvis Field. Jack Hunt didn't lose there much. And it was a foggy game. I remember that game. And, you had guys who maybe didn't have, I kind of look at Matt Tresky, and I kind of see a little bit of you in him as a player, because he didn't necessarily have the tools. But, I mean, he had a huge touchdown right off the bat for you guys that really set the tone for that game that night.
Sure. Again, the role plays. Matt, he bid his time, and he found. I think it was a diving catch in the end zone. If I'm not mistaken.
And he had a big touchdown, I believe, against Hartford Public as well.
Yes, he did in the playoff game.
Yeah. So
but that night at Ansonia, it was a rainy night, and I remember saying we really hadn't beaten anybody significant. I mean, obviously beating Holy Cross and beating Naugatuck are good wins because they're very good programs, but we felt that, we were going to win those games. We felt like we were the better team. But anytime you go to Ansonia with their tradition, you never know what's going to happen, no matter how good you think.
And their coaching, too.
Of course.
I mean, their coaching is like top notch. Now the big game. You suffered a pretty bad loss to Seymour the year before. Kind of left a bad taste in some people's mouths as the season ended. You go out there, you guys, are losing what I think a minute 45. And that's what I mean about your team. To drive down that field like they did and score with, I want to say, like maybe a minute and 12 left. That was a Friday afternoon game. You guys had got rained out that Wednesday. Everybody in the Valley was there. I mean, anybody you could think of was there. I mean, the parking was crazy. I mean, it was unbelievable. And that would be Woodland's first ever N.V.L title. Talk about what that was like for you.
That was a big man's football game right there.
Right.
It was back and forth, and Seymour was very good, very well coached. They had us scouted to the T for sure. Back and forth, and as you said, it came down to we got the ball. Actually, we had the ball, and we went down. We had a big completion down our sideline, and we fumbled the ball.
Right.
Shane Kingsley. He fumbles it, and Seymour gets the ball with like a minute and 50, something like that left. But we had 3 timeouts. I saw a little bit of a defeated look in our kids' eyes, but I said, hey, we're gonna stop them here. We got 3 timeouts. We'll get the ball back.
Right.
And sure enough, 3 run plays. We stopped them, called 3 timeouts. We got the ball back under a minute to go. And, our system of offense in the no-huddle spread shotgun was built for that moment. We didn't feel like it was only 50 seconds because we've scored so quick throughout the season. So we had a few completions. We're right up on the ball. Next thing you know, we're in the end zone. And then we still had to fight off, a late Seymour drive with their great quarterback.
Yes, yeah.
And
that was a great Seymour team, too.
Oh, yeah, great Seymour team. But to win a state championship, it was unbelievable. Just, the happiness, the joy, the excitement. It's really indescribable. It's one of those moments in life that you cherish forever. And I can remember feeling so great about it. And then the next thing I know, I have the coach from Hartford Public next to me because we're going to play them next in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he's giving me a film exchange. And I don't even know how to react.
Had to be surreal, right?
Yeah. And we're going to play them. That game was on a Friday. We're going to play Hartford Public on a Tuesday.
Right. So you didn't have a lot of time.
No time. We went out for pizza, and we talked about the game, and then that night we're already back to work, so we couldn't really even enjoy it. But what a great victory to beat Seymour. Not only because they're a great program, but a lot of our boys would have went to Seymour. Like Eric Marenick, his brother played for Sporting at Seymour, and I think that our boys were a little bit intimidated of Seymour because they had played Seymour Pop Warner and they knew that tradition. So we had to overcome that obstacle of beating them. So it was a great, great victory. And N.V.L champions on top of it.
Right. And I had mentioned Hartford Public. I think you guys beat them 13-6. Like I had said, Trasky made a big catch. State championship game against another N.V.L team. And it's kind of ironic that your first ever N.V.L win. Well, I think you beat Crosby the year before, but it wasn't. You guys weren't in the league, so
Right.
if you want to count that as an N.V.L. win, but your first win in the league was against Holy Cross,
Sure.
and then your first state title was also against Holy
Sure.
Cross, and I think you guys won. I want to say 25-0. You guys just. I think you guys felt after the Seymour game that this was destiny, and no matter what we had to do, we were going to win this no matter what.
Well, we were certainly on a mission, and we were taking that mission one game at a time. And I have to talk about the playoff game because Hartford Public comes to town. And when you look at them in the pregame, they have 4 Division I athletes that went on to Temple that played there. And I could remember our great running back, Pat Krakowski. He comes off the sideline. Now he's bent over and he's vomiting. He's like, Coach, this team is good. And I said, I know. I told you, you guys. You know, it was hard to get our kids thinking about Hartford Public after they had just beaten Seymour a couple days prior. They were, on cloud 9. Everybody's telling them how great they are. And then you get this hungry team coming in, athletic, in Hartford Public. So that was a difficult game. As you mentioned earlier, Trasky caught a touchdown pass, and we won the game 13-7.
Right.
And then moving on to the state championship game against Holy Cross, we felt like in pregame we had so much confidence. As you said, it was destiny for us that night. We didn't feel like, no disrespect to Holy Cross, they're a great team, but we just felt that this is our night. We've worked too hard. We've come too far.
Right.
Nothing is going to take this from us. Now, they came off and they put a little drive together to start the game out. And then Pat Krakowski intercepts the ball, returns it into our territory. We score with Jeff Jones on a screen pass, and we never look back and win the game 35-0.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. Having that moment against Seymour where you guys, like I said, on your final drive, you win the game. It's your first N.V.L. title. Then the state championship game, you kind of, like I said, they had a drive, like you said, they had a drive going on early in the game, but did nothing after that, and you guys win 35-0.
Sure.
Which one, I'm sure you were pumped up winning the state title, but, was winning that N.V.L. one, was it too hard for you to get as excited winning that N.V.L. game against Seymour like you did?
I don't discredit any victory. They're so hard. It's so hard to win any game, to beat anybody. I enjoy them all.
Right.
Certainly, when you win an N.V.L. title and a state title, those might have a little more meaning, and you might remember those a little more. But after each game that you win or lose, you look back and you learn something from it. But it's hard to beat anybody.
Right. Now, the 2005 season, now you've lost a good amount of players. I mean, these are guys who were with you for 4 years. So I don't think anybody could really, decide what kind of season you're going to have. But I'm sure you probably in the beginning of the year weren't expecting a back-to-back state title. You probably saw a young team. But again, that was also a team in 2005 that knew how to win as well. And they never looked back either.
Well, first, we did have some experience from the juniors in 2004 that became captains for us in 2005. Jeff Temple, Jeff Jones, Shane Kingsley, Mike Stankus. So we had good leadership to start with. Then our numbers were really good. I think we had 70 on the roster. I actually had to cut that year because we had so many people that were bought into the program. We had 35 to 50 players coming in each freshman class. We had talent on that team as well. We had Matt Dorsch's younger brother, Alex Dorsch. Now, Matt was a captain on the 04 team, big, strong linebacker kid.
Good.
His brother, Alex, was going to be our quarterback. He was 6'4", strong arm. So it was his time now. And he was excited to lead the team. And, long story short, we had a great season. We ended up winning another state championship.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, at Municipal Stadium, you had to play Ansonia for the N.V.L. title game that year. It was Jack Hunt's final season, and Ansonia had started the year off, with 2 losses, but they really came on at the end of the year. And you guys had to fight it out with them, and you beat them 35-28.
Sure.
Beating them back-to-back, I mean, that's unheard of. A lot of teams just don't do that. They don't beat Ansonia back-to-back.
You don't think about it when it's happening, but when I look back now, that was pretty incredible to beat Ansonia 2 years in a row. And they were young that year. The game was actually at Woodlands.
Woodland,
It was a good thing because if we were either in Ansonia or somewhere else, we might have gotten beat that night. But they had that young crew that went on to be number 1 the following 2 the next 2 seasons. So they were all sophomores, kind of like where we were, years before. But the game was back and forth, and we were up by 7 at the end of the game, and we had a goal line stand to hold them off to secure that victory. We won the N.V.L. that night.
Right. And now you play Seymour. Seymour had gotten so better as the year went on. They started off 0-2, and they just came on at the end of the year. They ended your streak, and that was a tough pill to swallow. But how did you keep your kids from, putting it behind them? And you had a playoff game to win. You had to try to, get a back-to-back state title. How were you able to get them over that game?
It was a weird spot because it was that in-between game between winning the N.V.L. championship and then having to play a playoff game.
Right.
So the game meant nothing really other than pride. And, pride is a lot. Certainly it's a great rivalry and you want to beat them. But, we had some kids that we had to hold out in that game. And Seymour, as they do, they get better throughout the season. And we had to go to DeBarber Field, and always a tough place to play. And, Coach Spooney, of course, has his guys all riled up and ready to play. And they were the better team that night. And they took it to us, and they broke our 22-game winning streak. And, we had to sell to the kids that the new season is starting now. And we have a playoff game coming up in just a couple of days on that next Tuesday. And, we set the second season goal here of winning a state championship.
Right. And, it didn't seem like the team had a letdown. They played both playoff games. The Tuesday one obviously was a hard-fought victory, but you guys, what was it like for you to win a back-to-back state title? Because it's so hard to win one, never mind two. Did you take a deep breath and say, my God, I can't believe this is happening again?
The kids were just so resilient, after getting beat by Seymour, having that letdown, and to turn it around that fast and to refocus their goals and how they wanted to end their season, going down to North Branford, playing a road game against a good option, well-coached team, and getting that job done, and then going to play Brookfield, which was undefeated. I think they were 13-0 or something coming into the game.
Very good team. Yeah.
They had beaten great Massac team a couple of times that season, and we were the underdogs going into that game. And we had a very good defensive game plan, and we did just enough offensively, and our veteran leadership took us over the hump, and we were lucky to win the second state championship. And again, you don't really think about when you're there in that moment. Of course, you're excited, but you look back now, and I haven't even thought about it, and I'm wearing the ring today, but it was really special. Those kids, it's their team, and they earned it.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you teach physical education at Woodland, correct?
Yes.
So you must every day walk into that gym and see those banners hanging up. What is that like for you? Does it ever get old, or do you always smile when you walk in that gym and see those banners?
You always smile, of course.
Right.
And, long after I'm gone, and hopefully those banners will still be up there. And it's just a credit to so many people, families that bought in, and all the hard work that we did. It was really, really special, and, just really awesome.
Right. So fast forward a little bit, 2007 season comes to an end. You have an opportunity to coach college football. I believe quarterbacks coach at the University in New Haven. How difficult of a decision was that? Did you need a couple days, or was your mindset that I had to take it to the next step now?
Well, to be honest, growing up, I always thought I wanted to coach in college, or, the next level. And I just felt like it was the right time. I felt like we accomplished a lot at Woodland, and it was time now for the next challenge. So when I had the opportunity to go to the University of New Haven, it was a good fit because they were going to be a club team the first year. We weren't even going to be in the NCAA until the following year. So we were able to recruit our class and have them for 5 years. It was almost like starting Woodland again, but this time I'm an assistant. And I was brought on early to be an assistant wide receivers coach. And then after a couple of weeks, I was now the head wide receivers coach. Right. And then I got moved to quarterbacks coach, and then it was the passing game coordinator. So it was just an evolution. Right. And, I'd be remiss not to thank Coach Russamundo for giving me a chance and giving me an opportunity to fulfill one of my dreams, to coach. And I was able to keep my teaching job. It was only 11 miles from my house to University of New Haven. Right. So I was able to go to work and then go to practice right afterwards, and it was a lot of fun.
What was the most challenging thing, though, about going from a high school coach now to the collegiate level?
You know, I really believe that football is football.
Right.
A lot of the things that we were doing at Woodland, New Haven was doing. And kids are kids. You know, they want to be motivated. Now they're a little bit older and they're from different places. So you have to gel them together because one's from Florida, one's from Connecticut. It's not like you grew up from kindergarten on. You already know this, your friend. You have to gel them as your family. So that's really one of the biggest differences.
Did you enjoy it right from the start? I mean, did you miss high school football at all, or were you happy to be there?
Certainly there's aspects that you miss. You miss being a head coach and making all the shots. But it wasn't my time then to be the head coach, and I was able to learn from Coach Rosamundo a lot of different things. And I was able to help build that family that we had.
Right. And I mean, I know your days probably got longer, but you know, you were the type of guy too, when you coached at Woodland, you kind of coached, I always said this, like an N.F.L. coach, because you would put, like, you know, between teaching and coaching football, you put almost 13-hour days in. So, I mean, it wasn't anything new, but I mean, there is a commitment that a college coach expects out of you that they don't necessarily expect out of if you're coaching high school. So was that tough at all? Like,
well, you know, my 7 years at Woodland, it was 365 days. You
right.
know, Jill always says to me, my Jill, she says, you know, we didn't go on vacation for 7 years. You know, it literally was 365 days, the only thing I ever thought about. So working hard was, you know, never going to be a problem for me. I wanted to work hard. And then when I got to New Haven, I can remember I would go down for 6 a.m. meetings, 6 to 7. Then I would have to leave New Haven to go teach. And then I would have to get out before the buses left and, you know, go down to practice and stay till 8 o'clock at night. So for 5 years, that kind of took its toll on you. But Coach Rosamundo did a great job of giving me that leeway, understanding that my teaching job was first and I had to fulfill those obligations. And he helped work around my schedule to make it work for me.
Right. You know, Chris, when I had Coach DeCenzo on, I kind of mentioned you and I said, you know, what does it mean to you as a head coach to see one of your former players go out there and be a great head coach? And one of the things he said, which I think probably would make you feel good as a former player, is he said, you know, I was able to learn from Chris about spread offenses. He taught me things. I mean, that has to make you feel good that he was your teacher and now you could teach him something as time went on. And I mean, how big of an impact did he make in your life?
You know, when I was growing up, my parents went through a divorce, and, you know, I was living with my friend's family at the time. And, you know, Coach always kind of kept his eye on me to make sure I was doing fine, him and his wife, Ann. So he had a remarkable impact in me, that so much so that I wanted to be a coach.
Right.
I don't think you can really give any better compliment than that. You know, I wanted to be what he was. Just a wonderful man and a great coach, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. You know, 2 state titles, 2 N.V.L. titles, an undefeated season. I mean, some coaches don't ever get that opportunity. But I'm sure the wins obviously mean a lot. But what does it mean to you about getting these kids into school, teaching these kids to be men, you know, getting them ready for the rest of their lives, and then seeing them turn into the men they are today? How does that make you feel as a head coach?
Well, you know, in the beginning, I have to be honest, I was clouded a little bit. You know, I thought winning was the end all, and that's the only thing I ever really thought about. You know, certainly tried to build character, and, you know, we got kids into school after the season was over, but you don't learn until you get older, you mature, and you realize what's really important. And, you know, and that is the life lessons that you're teaching. To have a Shane Kingsley now being a head basketball coach at Ansonia makes me proud that, you know, maybe we got it right and we taught this kid what's really important, you know, bettering other people. That's what the profession is all about. And that's what my coaching philosophy, more so now than ever before, is.
Right. A lot has changed in high school football over the years. I should say high school sports in general. Looking ahead 5 years from now, Do you think it's possible for you to be a high school football coach again, or do you just think like the game has changed too much for you to have to go back to it?
You know, I take it 1 year at a time, and I see where I'm at, see where my passions lie. Because you need, in high school football, you need to, such as life, you need to have passion.
Right.
You can't just do it for, certainly not the money. You
Right.
know, you gotta generally love to grind and to work every single day. So I take it year to year and see what opportunities are there, and you know,
Right.
hopefully again, I'll be all in. My feet will be in.
Does it bother you a little bit? You know, one of the things I talked with Coach Sponheimer about is, you know, they kind of limit a coach a lot nowadays. You know, I think if you have a bye week, they don't even allow you to wear pads.
Right.
You could practice, but you can't wear pads. I think the triples and doubles sessions are gone. Those
Sure.
are no more. They talk about the concussions a lot, but one thing Coach Sponheimer brought up, which I thought was a real good point, is he said nowadays the helmets these kids wear are so much better than the helmets you wore as a player or helmets he wore as a player, yet they're putting all these restrictions. Is that a part of the game that bothers you to see how much it's changed in that aspect?
Well, I mean, I just think it's evolution and part of life. You know, from the NFL down, they're going to try to make the game safer. So you have to adapt. And if everybody is on the same playing field, then it's fair for everybody. So it doesn't concern me. You know, you make adjustments to your practice schedule, and you make do with the best you can.
Right, exactly. Now, is there ever a desire to be a head coach at the collegiate level, or are you content with being an assistant? I mean, you'd obviously probably have to give up teaching to do it. Would you be willing to make that sacrifice, or probably not at this time?
I could tell you, growing up, that's all I ever wanted to do. You know, and then
Right.
you know, life throws you curveballs and things change. And I have a son now who's 12 years old.
Right.
And I want to make sure that I'm doing the best I can for him, to see him on his way. And I'm sure I'm going to feel that fire again someday to get back into the mix and to be a head coach. And whether it's in high school or get back into the college game, I do love the game of football. And I know someday I'll be back in it.
Right. And, you know, you brought up your son. You're coaching a lot of his baseball teams. You know, you're coaching a few leagues, things of that nature. You also coached girls basketball at Shelton, which a lot of people don't know, but you coached the freshman team. So, I mean, you just love coaching in general. It doesn't matter the sport. You just love to kind of teach the kids the game of baseball, the game of softball, the game of basketball, football, whatever it might be. You're a coach first more than anything else.
You know, as I said, you have to have passions, and when you can know what your passions are. Fortunately for me, it's always been in coaching. You know, I love the competition of the game, but I also love to mold the teams and to get each player to buy in and to bring out the best in them. I think that's what a coach should be doing. So it's a lot of fun. You know, each team, no matter if it's the girls Shelton basketball team or my son Brady's Little League team, we try to mold the teams together and to bring the best out of them and make it fun.
Right. And I'm sure you enjoy coaching the Little League. To me, you know, there's pressure, but there's not pressure. I mean, you're teaching them how to play the game right, and at the same time, you're having a little fun. I'm sure you know when your son gets a big hit, joy as a father is the most rewarding thing that you could ever get out of something like that.
Well, two things. Number one, I think there might be more pressure in Little League than there is in Division II college football.
Really?
Let me state that for the
Wow.
record. But oh yeah, to watch my son grow, I would give back all the championships I ever won to watch him work hard and to be successful on the field. And it's hard because you push your son. I know I probably push him too hard, but you know, you give him that tough love because you want him to do the best he can. And it's certainly been a great joy for me.
Right, but you know one thing, you know, you talk about pushing him hard, but one thing I've noticed, Jack Hunt did this with his oldest son, not John, but his oldest son, Joey. And you've kind of done it with your son, is you don't pressure them to play football. You know, if they don't like it, they don't like it. You're not going to sit there and force them to play. You just want them to do something. And it seems like, you know, that's a great job by you. It was a great job by Jack that, you know, you may have the love for it, but if they don't, that's okay too.
You have to let them be themselves. You know, let them choose their own course and certainly provide direction for them. But if they don't love it, then they're going to end up hating it, and I certainly don't want my son to be forced to play football until he's ready. And if he's ready, then great, I'll help him out whatever level he's playing. And if he's not ever going to play football, I'm okay with that too.
Right. Tell me what Derby, Shelton, and Woodland have meant to you in, you're talking 30 years, those programs. What have they meant to you? Yeah, start with Derby, obviously.
Well, Derby really laid the groundwork for me. It was the base of the house.
Right.
All the fundamental philosophies of the game and the great motivation and leadership by the coaches, the great tradition. That's who you are at a young age. And then, moving into Shelton, I felt like it was a course at Yale,
Right.
learning the game in a bigger scale too, because it was a N.V.L school, obviously, so the management of so many kids comes into play. The practice organization I learned there was unbelievable, the camaraderie. And one thing I say about all the programs that I've been in is we've had staffs that were loyal and trusted one another, and we're all on the same page, and that's why we were successful.
Right.
And then, moving into Woodland, again, I tried to build a staff, and we did build a staff of great teachers, guys with energy, and we tried to build a program from the bottom up with great tradition and all the fundamentals that we learned in the other programs.
Right. Now, I'm probably going to be wrong when I say this because it's been so many years, but AWLC, what does that mean? Tell me.
It's said a lot of different ways.
Right.
But at Shelton, we adopted an animal warrior champion legend,
Right.
AWCL mentality. Basically just giving it your all, and
Right.
and then we carry that on to Woodland, and I know a lot of the players that we coach, it branched out into other areas in their life. It's a way of life, really, for a lot of the players.
Right. And I think that's why you've been so successful, because you also make sure that you have fun with the kids too. For 3 hours, it's Coach Anderson's practice. I don't want any nonsense. But when practice is over, you know how to separate the two, kind of ask them how they're doing with their lives. Is there anything you could do? And, at the same time, you're like a father to them too. You're looking out for them. You're not just about wins, just wins and losses. You're about, you're in my program. To me, you're my family. You're my son. And those kids are like your sons. I'm pretty sure that's how you felt about those kids.
Well, they have to see you as a human being too. I'm certainly a lot different during that 3 hours of practice than I am when I'm off the field. On the field, obviously all gung-ho, regimented. Off the field, you're talking about what's going on at home with the player and trying to find out, does he need help in that area?
Right. Coach, I said I was going to bring this up as we move forward, and I am. I would go to football games with my father, but I never really got into Derby football until that famous October game on a Sunday afternoon, Derby versus Ansonia. Derby won that game, and I remember watching Cable 10 that night, watching you get player of the game. And just I could see that the hard work and dedication that you put into Derby football. It was at that point that I really loved Derby football. And I wasn't a good player. I was not a good talent. But one of the reasons I stayed with Derby football for the 4 years was because of you. And I've always said this time and time again, that I have a lot of favorite Red Raiders, but my all-time favorite Red Raider has always been Chris Anderson, and it's because of the hard work, the dedication, and how you went from a freshman and you weren't maybe the best player in the world, and then your senior year, you're player of the game, and it's the hard work right there. And I've always said that you were my favorite player, and I probably didn't tell you that, but I had to tell you tonight on this show.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I'm really humbled, and I'm honored that you would say that to me. I was a very average player, as I mentioned, and I just wanted to be a good leader for Derby, and I bought in. I wanted it. I had Derby pride and did the best that I could, and hopefully, I feel good that you saw that, and, that got into you and maybe got into somebody else, and that's what it's all about.
Right. And, Coach, I just think that everything you've done, how you've put in the dedication, the commitment, the work ethic. Because at the end of the day, you mentioned, you haven't went on a vacation in 7 years, things of that nature. You do put a lot of your time in for these programs. When you're in high school, guess what? There's times you probably don't want to be at practice. You want to, hang out with your girlfriend, or you want to do this or do that, but you have to give 3 hours every day if you want to get better. And you've taken that into your, adult life as well with, the time you put in at Shelton. Look at that. I mean, in your second year as freshman coach, team goes undefeated. And then Woodland, I mean, in 4 years, you guys are state champions. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's all hard work. That's all dedication. And I mean, that's really, it kind of says who you are as the person, not only as the coach.
Well, thanks, Nate. A lot of people are responsible for those undefeated seasons and the successes that we've had on those various teams. I'm very blessed in that I know what my passion is, and I love what I do. And I'm very fortunate that I've had great mentors that have taught me the right way to play, to coach, to teach. Without those mentors, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now.
Right. Before we leave here tonight, what does you, Chris Anderson, want to be remembered as? I mean, looking back, what do you want people to be able to say about you, years from now?
Well, certainly a guy who's given it his all. I've dedicated my entire life to the game of football and to kids. I hope they think that I'm a good guy, and I'm all in it for the kids and did the best that I could.
Well, Coach, I mean, congratulations on a successful career. I mean, like I said, as a player, as a coach, it's been an unbelievable ride for you, and you've done a great job, and I really admire you. And to me, this was a highlight and an honor for me to have you on the show, and I really do appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
I'm honored that you had me.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. It started off with a 68-6 defeat. It was on that afternoon that Chris Anderson decided that if he was going to be good at football, good in life, he had to devote himself 150% to everything he did. You saw what happened 3 years later. Player of the game against Ansonia in a 10-7 upset on a Sunday afternoon at Ryan Field. Years later, he took all those great things he's done and took them to Shelton as an assistant coach who helped a young team go undefeated 11-0 as freshmen. He carried that over as an assistant coach, state championship team in 2000. Then he moved over to Beacon Falls, a brand new school, a brand new program. He took that program and established it right away. In 4 years, they were state champions and an undefeated season. In all, 2 state titles, 2 N.V.L. titles, 2 Housatonic League championships as a player, not to mention the 2 state titles he had at Shelton as an assistant coach. Words like champion, warrior, legend are used a lot in everyday life. You could dust off those words for Chris Anderson. I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.